since I've taken medication and can't go anywhere, and I forgot to do it the other day before every sacred hole in my body started uh, bleeding, I went and saw the First Omen, and I forgot to shoot a review of it, so I'm gonna shoot a review of it now. All right, here we go. I'm a little loopy, but we'll see how this goes. Um, so the original Richard Donner Omen, um, big fan of that movie. I prefer The Exorcist, but I respect the hell out of The Omen and out of Rosemary's Baby and that era of, was it Time Magazine, Is God Dead on the cover. Um, we've entered this kind of new era of Satan exploitation, basically, as we have, we're a couple weeks off from the release of Immaculate, which I feel is a better film than this one. And we're coming off of things like Late Night with the Devil and obviously the fucking terrible fourth Exorcist movie. But I don't have as close an affinity to the first Omen movie as I do to the third one. I really like the one with Sam Neill in it. I think it's fucking batshit crazy. When the mother takes the iron to the baby. And Sam Neill is fantastic in it, obviously, and there's a connection between that and the 1981 movie Possession, because that's going to come into this movie. So I didn't know what to expect with this one at all. All the trailers I saw were pretty lame. But then I started reading things about how, it was going to be NC-17. I'm like, they say that's shit all the time. To try to get horror fans to go into the theater and think they're going to see something different. This was different. It was very different. Much different than I expected it to be. It is in the same way that Immaculate, it's Euro Catholics nunsploitation, and it does push the envelope in a lot of places. You got a fucking demon hand coming out of a vagina. They show in the movie and stuff like that. But again, this one I feel could have been spaced out a bit more towards from Immaculate. And I understand you're going up against fucking Godzilla and King Kong and the Ghostbusters and all that kind of stuff. So the spaces on the map where you're trying to give an alternative to the big spectacle film. I just feel like this would have found more of an audience if it was spaced out a bit more. And they probably came off the heels of The Exorcist. They were probably like, that thing's going to make fucking bank. Let's get ours out there. And then when it didn't make bank, they're like, let's push ours back a little bit. But yeah, this one is about a young nun who travels to Rome and gets involved in this orphanage where there's all these other nuns, and then slowly we untangle the story of this Catholic conspiracy, basically, that will lead us into the first Omen film. I was with this movie from the score to the acting to the design. It had this very true, like I said, 1970s Euro exploitation style vibe to it. I talked when I did the Immaculate review about Demoni and The Other Hell and those type of films. The idea of the Catholic guilt film that came out of Italy at that time. It was about sacrilege and exploitation, basically. This is a lot of that, and has some beautiful composition to its shots and some legit fucked up imagery, which I really appreciated, because I do feel like maybe it did have an NC-17 cut at one point with some of the things that they did. Now, in the original, the first Omen movie, it is left up to chance and vagary until the very end as to what exactly is going on. This one kind of has a little bit of that same vibe with Charles Dance's character in the beginning. You got a great cast here too. You got like Bill Nighy's in this movie and stuff. And the main girl, I've never seen her in anything else before, but she has this beautiful dark young Amy Adams kind of look in certain times. She has a very similar shaped face and upturned nose to Amy Adams. And this one starts off with the kind of vague qualities of it, but then it just goes there, and then it's just fucking showing you like, close-ups of the horned beast, the fucking milky eyes and claws and shit like that. But it's always done. There aren't as many jump scares in as I thought there was going to be. There's a hallucinogenic tone to it, without being like a Blumhouse style movie or like a Platinum Dune style movie where it's just like, we're just gonna show a creepy nun standing there staring or something like that, and they do like the weird like maybe shaky face thing they would have done with like House on Haunted Hill or Fear.com or some fucking shit like that. This does have a lot of that imagery, but it's worked into the story in a way of that. The nun is in Rome for the first time, and she has a roommate who's taking her out to the club or whatever, and she's like, I'm gonna cover my body in a habit. I wanna let it breathe. And she goes out with and drinks and dances with this man, and you watch like her awkwardness as being raised in this kind of in the habit basically, but not like Sister Act, Back in the Habit, which fucking the first Sister Act movie is fucking great, and I'll hear no bad words said about the first Sister Act movie. Whoopi Goldberg's great in that fucking movie. Kathy Najimy is great in that movie as well. I just rewatched that not too long ago and was like, God damn, this is fucking good. Like, this is some good shit. And I think Lauryn Hill was in the second one, maybe. I don't remember, but there was a second one, Back in the Habit. Not as good, but that has nothing to do with The Omen. But so she's out at the club, and you get this kind of like, hallucinogenic, but she's caught up in the music and drinking and all this kind of stuff. And it kind of is the first time they're like, okay, we can't believe our eyes and our senses, because this is through the impression of this nun who is an unreliable narrator, in this story. And you feel like we're following to, there's a nun who's there who's not quite right. The other ones are a little guarded. But they have a nice little community where you don't think that there's anything amiss. And there's one child who they have to keep locking away. She's a wild child. They put her in the bad room and stuff like that. And she draws these pictures that are like, bad, like little kids with, they would say they're troubled or something like that. They lead you to believe that this child is important to this story, and that we live in a secular time in 1970s, and it's kind of set amongst the sort of like the Suspiria remake as well, where that one was set in Germany, between East and West Germany at the time when the Berlin Wall was standing, and you had a lot of civil unrest. This one is in Italy, as there's a youth rebellion and people are turning away from the church, and that's kind of where the crux of this story is, where we live in a secular world now where the church has had power for so long that they need to retain power. So there's the church, and then there's the church. And then there's the people who will not relinquish power. So in not relinquishing power, they basically will create the Antichrist. And there's all these children who, throughout time, because the mothers have lain with the beast, and they're all born deformed because their father's a fucking goat monster. And but there are still children that all they all bear the mark of the beast, and they need a male and a female of them to mate to create the Antichrist. So we're kind of in this story, and obviously we know where it's going to end up for the Omen series to take off, and not the fucking terrible remake they did with Julia Stiles and Liev Schreiber. That was bad. The only good thing about that was the dude who played the priest in that one who gets killed is the dude from he was Bob in not House by the Cemetery, in City of the Walking Dead, and what's the City of the Walking Dead? Gates of Hell. He's in Gates of Hell. It has different titles. Fuck it. And he's also in Cannibal Ferox. He's the guy who gets his dick cut off and then the top of his head cut off. He's in the David Hess movie with directed by Ruggero Deodato. House at the Edge of the Park, I believe it was. So yeah, he was an Italian kind of grindhouse actor, always played really sleazy characters. It was cool to see him in that. So I remember when Fangoria did an article about the remake of The Omen, they talked about him being in it, and I was actually more excited to see him in it because I was like, why the fuck they cast him in this like big Hollywood remake, you know? But it's cool. So as we kind of get into this story, I saw where the twist was coming, but you know, I was still in it. I was still so impressed by like even little things like where she's sleeping and her hair is kind of like it almost looks like spider webs the way that it's shaped and on her pillow, and it's like little things like that you don't see in movies anymore. You don't see that style of design in stuff anymore, like little idiosyncratic uh, quirks that you'd see in a lot of these Italian movies back then. So I really, really respected that. And as we got into the story, I was really into it as well. And it gets horrible. There's the, you know, they repeat the scene from the first movie where the baby, you know, the nanny is like, it's all for you, Damien. She hangs herself. In this one, she sets herself on fire. And I was like, I'm not crazy about repeating that beat, but, you know, I've seen far worse, like, member berries in movies more recently. You know, and then that nun comes back later in a scene where they lock you know, our main nun gets into trying to solve this mystery, and she steals all the files of the little girl, and she's trying to get her out of there, and they lock her in the bad room, and the nun who set herself on fire comes out, and she's completely burned, and she's like giggling, and like, you know, almost like in the Ash's girlfriend zombie in Evil Dead 2. It feels like a callback to that almost. So I'm fucking in this movie, and I'm like, wow, this is great. There's a dude who's like cut in half, and all kinds of fucked up shit is going on, and I'm really like digging this flick until the third act, and then it falls apart for me. You know, the conspiracy is unveiled. We find out what I had guessed already as to who actually is bearing the mark. And there's a car accident, and then our main lead basically recreates the scene that Isabella Jolly does in Possession, and it bummed me out because even as they were driving, something about it as I'm watching it, she's looking out the window, how she was dressed and everything. I was like, this looks a lot like Possession. And then as soon as she gets out of the car, and she starts, like, you get the spirits taking over her body, and she's, like, kind of snapping and barking and convulsing and stuff like that. And then she gets down on the ground, and she's pregnant at this point with the Satan's baby. And you have, like, you know, the stuff coming out of her and all that. But it's literally just that scene. And it bummed me out, man, because I think that movie's fucking brilliant. I think that movie's hard to watch. But that scene is so brave and bold for that actress and director, and looked physically, it's draining just to fucking watch that scene, you know. And I was just like, okay. And then you have the birthing scene, and you know, the little girl comes in who we thought was going to be the Omen kid, and saves the other baby because there's twins and they just need the male. And then there's a fucking, they set the, like, temple on fire. And then there's a fucking CGI fire devil. And they linger on it for way too fucking long. And I'm just like, come on. Like, those two, that scene right there, like, the Possession one, you could get away with it as far as because, like, it's not as well-known a movie. It was featured on Joe Bob Briggs last season. But I do feel like if the director was a big fan, that's great. You know, it's awesome. They wanted to work that in there. I just felt like I saw it coming, and then once it happened, there were people in my theater who were kind of like giggling about it, and I don't think that is the I don't think that is the emotion that the director had in mind and the actor had, because they performed the scene very well. It's well lit. It's, you know, it's you know, the shot composition is great, but I just feel like I don't know, it felt off to me. Then you get the fire CGI monster. Then you have where I thought the logical closure point of the movie was going to go, where you have, you know, the file for, you know, Gregory Peck's character from the first one. He's a senator. Something happens to his baby. They get Damien. We're off to the races. Fine. Movie should have ended right there. Instead, what we get is this terrible coda, which like kind of not ruined the movie for me, but really like left me cold because there was so much of the movie that I really, really liked. And then they add this scene where the priest who kind of set everything in motion by unveiling the conspiracy and everything, he comes to our nun and the little autistic girl who we thought was the Omen, and then the little girl that was born, but they took Damien, who was the little boy, and he shows up in the snow, and she's like, get off our property, and he shows up just to say they gave it a name, they call him Damien, and I was like, we know. Why is that there? Other than just being that and the fire demon were studio notes, obviously, because they feel so counter to everything that the director had crafted before that like wasn't it enough to show Gregory Peck, and wasn't it enough to say that it was a boy, and to add the Omen music from the first one, from Donner's film. No, they had to go and they add this thing at the end, which I was just like, that's dumb. That's really dumb and disappointing. So I don't know. There's a lot to like in it. There's a lot of fucked up imagery. There's a lot of great acting in it. Fantastic music. Great lighting. Really cool designs of shots. I really like this. There's this like arc of candles, and then later on we see there's another arc of candles below it. And then when the camera pulls back, she's in the middle and she's praying. And it looks like she's in the mouth of a beast because of how the candle wax is melting. It looks like teeth, and there's two lights up here. And I was like, that's cool. That's a really well composed, shot. And there's a couple other ones too where just the way that they use the foreground and the background, there was a lot of thought that went into it. I just felt like those scenes at the end kind of like pulled me out of it, and it was just like, if it was the director, if it was the studio, it's like, have a little fucking restraint, man. Because you almost had something that was really fucking impressive and different. And that's where I feel like Immaculate was better, only in the fact that it didn't pull its punches. And it allowed itself to wallow in its fucking weirdness and in the vague qualities of it. And even its Immaculate's ending felt more in tune with the types of films that it was trying to emulate. So that is my pseudo recommendation of the First Omen. It was much better than I thought it was going to be. Much better than it has any right to be. Obviously, I prefer it to the second movie and to the remake. Obviously, that third act just kind of undoes a lot of the goodwill that it had built up for itself. So I'm looking forward to other things this director does, and I'm also looking forward to just a return to fucked up imagery in horror movies and diminishing of jump scares and stuff like that, and just kind of leave you with a creepy vibe. That's my favorite kind of horror movies, like something like a Hereditary or something that like you're thinking about it when you leave. And there was a lot of weird imagery in this that like I went, ooh, that's cool. I like that, So let's get more of that, and more Satan movies. We need more creepy Satan movies, and the church are the bad guys, and Satan's just trying to get his fuck on, man. So that's it. The First Omen. I'm really loopy now. I'm actually kind of surprised I made it almost 20 minutes into this without completely losing my train of thought, because at times I was like trailing off and I'm like, wait, did I say that already? Don't review on pain meds, kids. All right, bye.